Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Well, the pandemic has affected everyone. All of you watching, all of your friends, all of your family, all of your neighbors. But I could argue that maybe no one's been affected as holistically as my next guest. He has 600 properties in 30 states and 15 different countries, known best perhaps as the owner of the Houston Rockets, Tilman Fertitta. And now when the world shut down, Tilman, so did your businesses, from casinos to restaurants to the Rockets. How are you holding up?
I'm holding up pretty damn good, but I've got 45,000 employees out there that we've had to furlough. That is so tremendously unfortunate that we've got to get back to work as soon as we can. And these unemployment numbers of 16 million, and there's no telling what it's going to be next week, is what's so sad about this whole crisis.
How hard was that decision to lay off your employees?
You know, Brian, I went through the 87 crisis, the 2000, the 2008, and it's kind of something that you realize is you're doing your people a favor if you get them furloughed first, because they're the first to the unemployment line after the severance that you give them. And it's a trick that I learned many years ago, and that's why so many people are having a hard time now. But it's just unimaginable. We've all had to do little layoffs over the years, but to have to basically shut down your whole company, when you think about having amusement parks, aquariums, restaurants all over the world, a basketball team, casinos all over, and nothing is open. It's just, it's like a sci-fi movie that you would never believe.
So tell me, because you're on the Forbes list, because you're a self-made success story, you took enormous risks with your career, and for the most part, it's panned out. But who would have ever predicted a once-in-a-generation pandemic? So now it's time for you to get cash in. Give us an idea of how much cash is going out the window and how much you need to sustain it.
Yeah, my cash burn today, and this is what people don't understand, is that we all pay yesterday's bills with today's money. And when it just got shut down in a 48-hour period, you still have a tail of payroll and then severance that was $100 million for me, because my payroll is $1.5 billion a year that you still have to fund, which is done now. But my cash burn a day is still $2 million a day, which it's unfathomable. But that's why you've got to stay liquid. And I went out and did some other financings this week that'll take me through the end of the year. But we got to get all these people back to work, Brian, and we've got to do it in a safe way. The president has done a great job when he shut China down, and all the leaders from all the states and counties and cities. When they shut down the city of Houston, I thought it was premature, but they were 100% right. And we've got to do this to the end of this month, and we've got to start opening up in May. Not only on the financial side, but the mental health side is huge. I've talked to so many people that say, hey, I just want to come back to work. I'll do anything, but I got to get out of my house. So we're all struggling. We're all struggling.
So Bloomberg's reporting, Tilman, that you have actually looked for a loan and you've taken a loan at a rate of 15% interest. Is that true?
You know, I did. It was at 12% because there was such demand, and it was pari passu with my other first lien debt. That, you know, what's so interesting to show you how the world changed. 2 months ago, I borrowed a couple of $100 million at 3%, and here it is now, a few weeks later, and I'm at 12%. So that ought at LIBOR plus 12, but it was $300 million. But you have to have the insurance, because not the experts, not the politicians, not any of us, Brian, have any idea how long this is going to last. You know, what scares me and what made me do it, because I could get through most of the year, was when you study the Spanish flu, which is kind of unbelievable because it didn't start in Spain. It's just they're the only country and news organizations that would acknowledge it, and that's why it's the Spanish flu. But they had their peak at the same time that they started out when we did in the spring, but then it came back so strong, and their peak wasn't until the fall. And then it peaked, and then they had a little peak again in the spring. And so the one thing that we got to find a way to do is to have the antiviral or the vaccination so this thing cannot come back, or it will ruin the American economy. Once we're back, we've got to stay back, and it's still going to take a few years for it to come back.
So I will tell you that an hour ago, Bill Hemmer talked to the one of the modelers from Washington State, and they said the worst is over. And we see the numbers going down in the epicenter here in New York with hospital admissions, ICUs, as well as incubations. So there is a real positive sign. So having said that, Tilman, being that you need people in your hotels, you need people in your restaurants and casinos, are you prepared to do something incrementally with cleanliness, sanitation, obviously, and social spacing, to do something incrementally to begin to stand up some of your businesses and everybody else's?
Absolutely, Brian. It's a great question. We're already ordering masks, gloves, so much sanitation. So in the casinos, you know, which are from Nevada to Louisiana to Mississippi to Atlantic City, the Golden Nuggets, but then even like in New York, because we know how everybody's going to be scared that it Catch and Mastro's and Del Frisco's and all of I have so many concepts in New York that we're going to do whatever we can do to show the cleanliness. You're not going to have anything that anybody else can touch. There's not going to be a salt and pepper shaker on the table. Every table will totally be wiped down. Kitchen employees, masks, everything that we'll do.
And I'm convinced of it. If you look at your success timeline, everything you put your mind to, you achieve, and you'll get through this again. And that's where the confidence comes from. Tilman Fertitta, thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Brian.
It is Monday, the 13th of April of 2020, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is River City Hash Mondays. And it's a good day to have, well, you might call it leftovers, but we call it a reconstituted, repurposed dish of, well, it will attain gourmet quality, maybe even gourmand, because I actually hold being a gourmand in higher esteem than just being a mere gourmet. Why be someone who can just criticize when you could also enjoy the fruits of someone's labor? All right, well, speaking of enjoying the fruits of someone's labor, I really hate billionaire types, especially the ones who own athletic teams. And you listen to them and you think, you know, it doesn't take much to become a billionaire, obviously. Just the ability to walk all over people and grind your heel into their neck on the way up that ladder. So, yeah, this guy Tilman Fertitta knows how to game the system. He's been doing it for years. Every time a pandemic hits, he lays off his people so they're first in line at the unemployment office. That's the kind of employer he is, always looking out for what's best. I don't know if it's best for his workers, but it sure is best for him, isn't it? And, I heard that Santa Monica Gerbil Stephen Miller had to be escorted out of the CNN office building by security because he would not shut up and discontinue berating Jake Tapper. One could argue why CNN even booked Santa Monica Gerbil's Stephen Miller, but he is an actual member of this administration. And, it used to be that these people would come on and you'd have your tete-a-tete repartee and, lay out your policy. But this group, they call it the power of positive thinking. I think it's more like, hey, whoever has the most guns determines what is polite conversation. And if you happen to have a conversation with a news organization, say, how about the New York Times? Or say, how about Face the Nation? In which your head pandemic scientist goes out there and says, these are the actual facts. And when those facts don't line up with the lie that Trump and crew are putting out there, well, then I suppose that person who talked on Face the Nation, Dr. Fauci, is on his way out. I mean, Trump retweeted some Looney Tune loon saying Fauci's got to go, fire Fauci, and Trump retweeted it. Another aside, people have been wondering why Trump has been so deferential to Dr. Bricks. And you know what? It is uncanny. When you put photos of his mother at a similar age next to Dr. Bricks, the resemblance is uncanny. And you know how this guy's mind works. It doesn't. He's a lizard brain, so it's all about reaction, and he sees that. And the little pituitary gland-sized brain of his activates and goes, Mama, Mama, Mama. One thing we need to realize is that Scottish mother of Trump was a taskmaster. He went to Dad to get love, not Mom. Okay, I'm just saying. But the resemblance between Dr. Bricks and Donald Trump's mom is even more profound than her resemblance to George Washington on the dollar bill. Look at that one. That's an uncanny resemblance, too. In fact, my joke was I was hoping that the first thing that we do when we wrest the White House back from this guy is to take a picture of his mom off the dollar bill. And then I realized, oh, my God, that's George. Well, you got to be careful. You got to look at it a little bit more than just glancing or having a feeling. This guy, I mean, come on. We couldn't vote and elect the email lady because she had feelings. Yeah, this guy only goes by his feelings, but it's okay. He's a guy. All right. Joe Biden is being accused of sexual assault from back in the 90s. And apparently, Tara Reid filed a formal complaint, but it wasn't what you think it is. She didn't name Joe. And she didn't actually file an arrest or, another complaint. She apparently filed something so that she wouldn't get arrested for filing a false police report. And so then it is a much lesser, is like an incident report, didn't name who it was, but all indications, according to her and others, is that it was pointing at Joe. I would say diplomatically, I don't know what to make of this, but I do. And this is all too familiar. And it could be a hit job again. Is there any truth to it? It might be a grain of truth. I mean, there are people who are very uncomfortable with others who are demonstrably affectionate. And we live in times, even before the coronavirus here, where we moved away from, demonstrably affectionate motions like rubbing someone's shoulders. I mean, I don't mean standing behind them lasciviously, but putting your arm around somebody and saying, you're doing a good job. You can't do that anymore. That's considered inappropriate touching. And it could be an excuse. Oh, well, Joe comes from a time where people do this all the time, and he is, like a retail politician, and he's hands-on, and yes, he is. I come from a very affectionate family. I mean, hugs are what we give each other. I mean, yeah, we don't fight and hit, but voices can be raised, but we hug. We think it's nice to be affectionate. And that's what's so terrible about this disease. It sort of reminds me of the AIDS epidemic, where people were afraid of a kiss. And I got to tell you, coronavirus will be spread more with a kiss than AIDS ever was. And people were just afraid back in the day, and their fears were stoked by, oh no, another dimwit in the White House, basically run by his aides. Though I don't know in this case if the aides are really running the show that much. They may or may not. I think they do a little bit of direction, and, you throw the guy in the river and hope that he floats where you want him to float, and if it doesn't, you try to, throw some rocks and maybe it'll nudge him over there. This guy isn't running the ship of state. He's in a current so swift he can't even control his own emotions. I mean, and we were all condemned for voting for the email lady because she's so emotional. Well, that's the lot that we have, and apparently billionaire NBA owners can just lay off their people to game the system, and that's okay. That's, like Trump not paying taxes. It's a game. And those who pay taxes are losers because they don't know how to play. Well, what's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? In a move that could severely limit the nation's meat supply, Smithfield Foods announced it is closing its pork processing plant in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, after hundreds of employees tested positive for coronavirus. A major California labor union that announced it had discovered a stockpile of 39 million N95 masks that it was about to purchase was duped in an elaborate scam uncovered by FBI investigators. And the White House attacked Voice of America as anti-American and an enemy of the people. So Voice of America promptly fired back, defending its coverage is mandated by law. Something that this Trump administration knows nothing about. Actually, the law is anti-American. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where South African police were caught in the illegal sale of alcohol after the country banned the sales of spirits during the pandemic lockdown. Yeah, there was a spate of liquor store break-ins. Suspicious, isn't it? And Asian shares took a dive as OPEC and Russia finalized an unprecedented deal to cut global oil production by 10%. Are we going to see long lines again? I think we will. Oh, you don't remember those? Yeah, back in the day, we had to buy gasoline on alternative days, and they determined it by letters and numbers on your license plate. That's the fate we have now, folks. We are getting our GDP down to around Italy, so Russia gets what they want. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page is our chat room link, monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of the chat room link, at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, is the link to our Patreon page. And what is that? Well, it's so you can become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, so that your recurring contribution helps us fulfill our civic duties, and that is Resistance Radio, broadcasting 24/7, 365, except for little glitches that are beyond our control. You know, anything that happens out there with an ISP or even an electrical disruption somewhere in the world because of a tornado, 2 of them, Cat 5s. Do they do that, Cat? No, I guess it wouldn't be a Cat 5 tornado, but the big ones, 2 of them. And that's called an act of God, just so you know. Okay, beyond our control. And we had one of those briefly last night for about 15 minutes, but our Cracker Jack crew was on it, and we thank them for it. And your recurring contribution of, say, how about the cost of an espresso-type coffee drink sent to us once a month helps us pay our bills, and we need new gear, or newish gear. And that, though last night's disruption didn't have anything to do with the aging gear, because they're still working like workhorses, because they are workhorses, not just like, they are. And they're continuing to do it. Pretty soon they'll be put out to pasture to, they'll still be working of sorts, but at a much leisurely pace. A much leisurely pace. There we go. I'll get it out. It's Monday. Anyway, thank you for your generosity over these many years, and also thank you to those who have increased their contribution and those of you who are new. We really appreciate it all, and thank you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. Thank you, Tom. I take care of at Justice Putnam, and I also post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime, and then get that linked up on social media, though I found out I have about 19 hours left or so. I guess maybe it might be 17 hours left or so until I can post again on Facebook. So maybe not tomorrow morning, but soon I'll be on Facebook so I can get suspended again for some political speech that was just picked out of my past and presented as new. I don't know what's up with this algorithm. And Facebook keeps telling me on these reportings that when you ask for a review, it's going to go somewhere in the world, and they're going to use their local customs to determine if your political speech needs to be suspended or not. Interesting how that works. If Zuckerberg had taken a humanities class, instead of weaponizing a Rate a Babe co-ed site by pictures, yeah, that's why it's called Facebook. Anyway, enough of that. If you would like to follow the show on Twitter, do so at Cookbook West, and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, but did I say that already? iTunes, etc., etc., etc. Okay, like I said, it's Monday. That's a really a common excuse, even before this pandemic. Oh, we had a really nice Easter, my mother and I, as we've been sheltering in place. It's been pleasant enough that we were able to have a relatively early Easter dinner outside. Had a little bit of one of those teleconferencing things. I might have even been on Zoom. Everybody wants to do Zoom. I got to tell you, as much as I hate Skype, Skype is actually a much more secure platform. Who knew? Anyway, we did, with the other family members around the country and mostly the West Coast. We were kind of together. And, watch the little kids have their Easter egg hunt in their own backyards for once. What? What's up with that? Anyway, it was a very pleasant time. And my mom, I don't think she got too worn out. I don't think so. She got kind of worn out the days before, but yesterday was much more leisurely pace. here in our space. So it was quite lovely, in spite of the fact that, well, you know, people are dying around us in the thousands. Really sucks. All right, let's get in on this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and it's out of the Associated Press by, let's see here, yes, Anonymous Worker Bees at the Associated Press. Virginia-based Smithfield Foods announced yesterday, Sunday, that it is closing its pork processing plant in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, until further notice, after hundreds of employees tested positive for the coronavirus. Why does AP Style Manual keep calling it the coronavirus? It's not the coronavirus. It's the COVID-19. Oh, God. Coronavirus is like saying cola. I guess you could say the cola. And then everybody want to know, well, what cola is that, Coke or Pepsi? And everybody goes, it's really Shasta. And the people on the East Coast go, what? What's Shasta? Well, the head of the company said that this closing is going to really hurt the nation's meat supply. The announcement came a day after South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem and Sioux Falls Mayor Paul Tenhaken wrote to Smithfield and urged the company to suspend operations for 14 days so that its workers could self-isolate and the plant could be disinfected. Yeah, I don't want swine flu with my COVID-19, all right? The plant, which employs about 3,700 people in the state's largest city, has become a hot spot for infections. Wow, it's hitting the Midwest, the rural Bible Belt. Oh, my God. I thought they were covered in Jesus juice, and that prevented them. Well, this is no time to joke around, all right? Those who denigrated this whole thing as some sort of liberal plot to make Trump look bad are now facing the reality of, hey, when you're on LSD and you stand in the middle of the road thinking you're going to stop the truck, it's going to run right over you. Doesn't matter what you think. It's what the world really is. The plant, health officials said that 293 of the 730 people who have been diagnosed with COVID-19 in South Dakota work at the plant. Oh, my God. As a critical infrastructure employer for the nation's food supply chain and a major employer in Sioux Falls, it is crucial that Smithfield have a healthy workforce to ensure the continuity of operations to feed the nation. At the same time, employees need a healthy work environment, the Governor Noem and the Mayor Tenhaken wrote to the plant's operators. Smithfield announced a 3-day closure last week so it could sanitize the plant and install physical barriers to enhance social distancing, but yesterday it announced the plant's indefinite closure. The closure of this facility, combined with a growing list of other protein plants, you mean like Soylent Green, that have shuttered across our country. Oh, they'll never shut down the Soylent Green plants. You can believe that. Is pushing our country perilously close to the edge in terms of our meat supply, which means Soylent Green's going to be in even greater demand now. It is impossible to keep our grocery stores stocked if our plants are not running. These facility closures will have severe, perhaps disastrous repercussions for many in the supply chain. First and foremost, our nation's livestock farmers. I hope they remember this in November and they finally come to their senses. The Sioux Falls facility is one of the largest pork processing plants in the U.S. It supplies nearly 130 million servings of food per week, or about 18 million servings per day. Well, I want to know, isn't this pork going to China and then getting repackaged and then sold back to us? Or is Smithfield not a part of that chain? Now, there is no evidence that coronavirus is being transmitted through food or its packaging until it does. Other meat processing plants have also closed temporarily because of outbreaks of coronavirus, including a Tyson Foods facility in Columbus Junction, Iowa, where more than 24 employees tested positive. more anonymous worker bees at the Associated Press bring us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. A major California labor union that claimed to have discovered a stockpile of 39 million masks for health workers fighting coronavirus was duped in an elaborate scam uncovered by FBI investigators. Investigators stumbled onto the scheme while looking into whether they could intercept the masks for the Federal Emergency Management Agency under the Defense Production Act. Wow, they were going to pirate. Oh my God. I'm sorry. They were going to go and pirate the masks. They were going to go steal them on the high seas, apparently, so to speak, and then discovered it was all a scam. Wow, the scammers got scammed. The federal government has been quietly seizing supplies across the country as the outbreak spreads, so Trump can dole it out to his friends and hold back needed supplies to stop the pandemic to his perceived enemies. You mean how he feels? Well, that's interesting. This is a confluence of two great... Wow. Okay, back to the article at hand. U.S. Attorney Scott Brady told the L.A. Times that investigators tracked the tip back to a Pittsburgh businessman who said he'd been working with the Service Employees International Union, United Healthcare Workers West, to secure millions of masks. The businessman had been using WhatsApp to connect with a broker in Australia and a supplier in Kuwait, really, who are both now the target of a federal investigation. The union, known as SEIU, and the Pittsburgh businessman are not under investigation, and both appear to be among a string of middlemen who were fooled. There are opportunists who are looking for any victim, Brady said. Oh, you mean like Trump going and stealing needed medical supplies from hospitals who paid out money for them? And you know what? That's a government taking, and no one is being compensated at real market value. In fact, they're not getting compensated by any monetary giving. You would think this is unconstitutional, but he was impeached and he's still in office. The promise of 39 million masks was first made public on March 26. Oh, my birthday. What a birthday present. It was all a fake. When the union announced it had found the stockpile after 48 hours of frantic phone calls pursuing leads on potential suppliers, because Trump said, hey, get it yourself. Get off your butts. We're not shipping clerks handing out stuff on a street corner. The announcement by the union was widely covered by major media outlets and listed several hospital systems and government agencies as buyers. Behind the scenes, the deal quickly unraveled. Buyers said they failed to receive reliable information about where they could inspect the shipments. At one point, the Australian broker told the middleman in Pittsburgh that 2 million masks were located in a warehouse in Georgia and that the product had been inspected by a particular certification company. That, the FBI said, was also part of the ruse. No money was exchanged in the attempts to finalize the deal. Well, that's interesting. Experts in global supply chains say dubious brokers and suppliers have flooded the market with suspect offers, creating an atmosphere of confusion and distrust just as hospitals are trying to stock up on gear doctors and nurses need to protect themselves from the virus. Well, this sounds exactly what a mobbed-up government would do now, wouldn't it? request brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The White House launched an unusual attack this last Friday on the congressionally funded Voice of America, the U.S. broadcaster that for decades has provided independent news reporting around the world. Oh, you mean our own propaganda outlet? Fancy that. In a broadside directed against VOA's coverage of the pandemic and China, an official White House publication accused it of using taxpayer money to, quote, speak for authoritarian regimes, unquote, instead of ours, because it covered the lifting of the lockdown in the Chinese city of Wuhan, where the new coronavirus first emerged. Voice of America promptly fired back, defending its coverage. Voice of America spends your money to speak for authoritarian regimes, the White House said in its 1600 daily email summary of news and events. It said Voice of America's roughly $200 million budget should be spent on its mission to tell America's story and present the policies of the United States clearly and effectively to global audiences. We want them to be our propaganda outlet. But citing a Voice of America report from earlier this week on the lifting of travel restrictions and easing of the lockdown in Wuhan, the White House said that Voice of America too often speaks for America's adversaries, not its citizens. It noted that Voice of America had also recently pointed out comments by Iran's foreign minister critical of the U.S. Oh, horrors! Friday's attack followed another barb directed at Voice of America on Thursday by White House social media director Dan Scavino, who branded Voice of America a disgrace in a tweet. Boy, that word disgrace gets used around a lot in the White House now, doesn't it? Even John Bannon's been using it. Well, Voice of America fired back at both attacks, responding to Scavino on Twitter and defending its coverage as unbiased. It noted that it is required by law to present all sides of an issue. One of the big differences between publicly funded independent media like the Voice of America and state-controlled media is that we are free to show all sides of an issue and are actually mandated to do so by law, as stated in the Voice of America Charter. Director Amanda Bennett said in a lengthy statement that included links to numerous Voice of America stories highlighting shortcomings in China's response to the virus. Well, obviously we know that Trump has no capacity to understand any of this. He sees an article that he doesn't like and he wants 100% fealty from all levels of his government. Well, we better get to our break. Oh my. And we'll have a rather short one, won't we? And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world. And we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Wade Gibbs. I'm a big fan of sushi and ceviche, so I was alarmed to see the headline on a recent news release from the University of Washington stating that sushi parasites have increased 283-fold in the past 40 years. But after digging into the research, which came out of a marine ecology lab run by Chelsea Wood at UW's Seattle campus, I learned that the rising abundance of marine worms known as anisakids is actually less of a problem for people than it is for whales and dolphins, which are the natural hosts infected by those parasites. Wood's team did what's known as a meta-analysis. They collected data from 123 papers published over the past half-century that estimated parasite abundance in various species at sites all over the world between 1967 and 2017. Their analysis, published last month in the journal Global Change Biology, found that since 1978, when less than one worm was seen in every 100 host animals on average, the prevalence of anisakid parasite infection has skyrocketed to the point that more than one worm is now typically seen in every host animal examined in 2015. Anisakid worms grow in the guts of whales, spread to krill through the whale's poop, and then move up the food chain to squid and small fish like anchovies, then to big fish like salmon, tuna, and halibut, and finally to humans. In the U.S. and most parts of Europe, fish and squid served raw must first be frozen to kill the nematodes and their larvae, which are big enough to see with the naked eye. And even if you're unlucky enough to eat live anisakid larvae in your sushi, ceviche, or gravlax, you'll probably be fine. The worms rarely survive long enough in the human gut to cause anisakiasis, which typically involves abdominal pain and vomiting. The condition seems to be most common in Spain due to Spaniards' fondness for raw anchovies. Experts estimate there are roughly 8,000 cases a year in Spain. That works out to about one illness for every 10,000 meals of raw fish eaten. Chelsea Wood says the findings haven't put her off eating sushi. Her concern is that the rising abundance of anisakids might be harming the dolphins and whales that these parasites evolved to infect and grow inside for years. She notes that there are millions of species of parasites in the ocean, and we know very little about which ones are becoming more common. The epidemiology of the oceans is still in its infancy. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Wade Gibbs.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Colorectal cancer is the number 2 cancer killer of men and women in the United States, but it is preventable. Early on, colorectal cancer typically has no symptoms. It starts with a precancerous polyp or abnormal growth in the colon, which can be removed without surgery. Several tests are available to find these polyps, so they can be removed before they turn into cancer. Screening also finds colorectal cancer early when treatment works best. Recommended screening for adults at average risk begins at age 50 and continues until age 75. Learn about screening test options and find out which tests are covered by insurance. Talk to your healthcare provider about when you should be screened and discuss the best tests for you. For more information about colorectal cancer prevention, please visit cdc.gov/vital signs.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1903. That was the day that 25 delegates from 17 cities gathered in Washington, D.C. to discuss forming a union for laborers. General laborers, who often perform some of the most backbreaking work on projects like digging canals and surfacing streets, were often blocked from joining craft unions as full members. The laborers in D.C. decided it was time to join together and formed the International Hod Carriers and Building Laborers Union. That was the beginning of the union that today is called the Laborers International Union of North America, or LIUNA. The union published its first constitution in English, German, and Italian, reflecting the diversity of the members that they represented. At the convention, the delegates issued a Declaration of Principles. In it, they declared, quote, "We hold that all men are created free and equal, and that honor and merit makes the man, and that self-preservation is the first law of nature, and that he who would be free must strike the first blow." They then went on to describe their purpose, writing, quote, "First, to gather under one grand banner all of those who toil on buildings with our craft and calling. Second, to promote by all honorable means the social and financial standing of all those who wish to partake in the fruits of amalgamation. Third, to create general agitation for the purpose of making a universal 8-hour day to increase the wages of members of the craft. Fourth, to establish a system of conciliation and arbitration in different sections of our land. Fifth, to help members of the craft in securing lawful and profitable employment. For more than a century, LIUNA has fought for the rights of laborers.
This is Solidarity News on Radio Labor.
This is a Radio Labor report recorded on Monday, April 13th, 2020. I'm Mark Boulanger. The United States has now surpassed Italy as the country with the most COVID-19 cases. More than 20,000 people have died. Public health experts are predicting that if the current stay-at-home strategies are loosened prematurely, the death toll could reach 200,000. Meanwhile, in the world's richest country, the healthcare system is failing. The American Union National Nurses United has released a video calling for immediate help for the country's nursing staff.
It is scary being a nurse right now.
I'm sitting in my car because I'm scared to go inside.
Our healthcare system is failing us.
PPE, or personal protective equipment, is virtually non-existent at my hospital.
There is a delay in getting the equipment to us, and therefore there is a delay in providing patient care.
I had a patient who was having respiratory issues and was not able to get a respiratory treatment because the respiratory therapist did not have the proper mask.
Within the first hour of my shift alone, we had already had a massive shortage on face shields.
We're running low on gowns. We're running low on masks. Goggles are in back order, so some nurses have them, some nurses don't.
We have run out of gowns multiple times.
I have had to provide my own protective personal equipment.
Every nurse I know is not getting enough supplies, and it's putting all of us at risk.
What we're being told by our management is to use a surgical mask.
Surgical masks are not appropriate protection. We need the N95s.
We're told that if and when we receive an N95, we're to use it over and over again.
It can cross-contaminate if we're reusing masks.
All of a sudden, it is okay and acceptable to drop all the precautions, appropriate care, and just do the workarounds.
The CDC website says that times of shortage, we can always use a bandana.
And that goes against everything we know about microbiology.
This is not a time that we should be lowering the protection standards. We in patient care are not invincible.
It doesn't feel like our lives are being valued the way that they should be.
We feel more disposable than the mask.
This needs to change.
I'm not afraid of getting the virus. I probably will. But I'm going to take this virus and I'm going to give it to somebody else. And I'm going to give it to your grandma. And she's going to die. And that's going to be something that I carry with me for the rest of my life.
I want to fulfill my moral obligation as a nurse and protect everybody.
Please listen to us when we ask and demand that we need proper PPE and we need supplies of it today. Not next week, not in 2 weeks, not in a month. We need it now.
The largest labor federation in the U.S., the AFL-CIO, is doing its best to help its members get through the crisis. Liz Schuler is the federation's secretary-treasurer.
We are all navigating through these difficult and scary times. A public health crisis has turned into an economic disaster. And frontline workers don't have adequate protections and are working to the point of exhaustion. And many more, millions more, are out of work and worried about basic necessities. And America's unions have been working nonstop to make sure working people get the help we need to be safe on the job and the economic relief that allows us all to stay at home. We work to make sure the relief packages Congress passed recently put the needs of working people first and communities first. And many of the laws and benefits have been expanded, like unemployment insurance, to help us get through this incredibly tough time. And to help working people navigate these federal and state benefits, and assistance programs, the AFL-CIO put together an online resource that has information about unemployment benefits, paid leave, health insurance, community assistance resources. Together, we will get through this 6 feet apart, but together, always together.
And that's it. International labor news you can use. Thank you for listening. And remember, it's all about caring for each other through global solidarity.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. River City Hash Mondays. We always begin, weather from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently, 38 degrees Fahrenheit. We're not supposed to get that low. What the heck? Well, we're going to have nearly the same forecast as we had yesterday, which was plenty of sunshine, highs near the low to mid 70s, and winds out of the northeast at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Clear skies tonight, lows near 40. Ouch! Winds out of the north at 5 to 10 miles per hour. And then mostly sunny skies tomorrow, highs in the mid 70s. Winds out of the north at 5 to 10 miles per hour. We are now in Jackson County, Oregon, and Southern Oregon, are up to 46 confirmed cases of coronavirus. None have deceased, though Josephine County, where I am right on the county line of, registered their first coronavirus death over the weekend. Grass pollen locally is low. The air quality index in the region is good at 33 parts per million. And the daytime UV index is moderate at 5. It's come down one tick. Barometric pressure is rising, at 30.27 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles. And relative humidity is at 56%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Yes, it's Monday. London is 52 and fair, and their prime minister is out of the hospital from coronavirus. Paris is 60 degrees and sunny, and they're going to have a lockdown because of coronavirus. Rome is 67 and sunny with coronavirus. Kyiv is 70 degrees and fair with coronavirus. Kabul is 58 with a light rain and thunder, and that's not enough to get rid of the coronavirus. Hong Kong is 64 and partly cloudy. They like to think they've plateaued with the coronavirus. Tokyo is 43 with a rain shower. They have lots of coronavirus. Sydney, Australia, 60 degrees and clear, and they're having all sorts of constitutional issues because of coronavirus. San Francisco, California is 51 degrees and partly cloudy, still in a statewide shelter-in-place order because of coronavirus. And New York is 58 degrees with lots of rain. And unfortunately, a lot of deaths because of coronavirus. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. anonymous worker bees at Reuters bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. South Africa, which banned the sale of all alcohol and cigarettes under a coronavirus lockdown that triggered a wave of lootings of liquor stores, said it had caught police officers who were complicit in illegal alcohol sales. South Africa's police minister says a ban on all sales of alcohol has helped lower crime during a coronavirus lockdown, but with liquor stores shut, the country has seen a growing black market for alcohol and a wave of attacks on shuttered shops. In a statement, the police ministry said there had been at least 16 reported instances of burglary and looting of liquor stores in the Western Cape, home to the city of Cape Town. 2 police warrant officers had been arrested after being caught buying alcohol for resale. Alongside a store manager and cashier, 2 further members of the police in another province were caught escorting 3 light pickup trucks loaded with alcohol. Well, they're just providing muscle during a time of need.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Alex Viega of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Stocks fell broadly in early trading on Wall Street as the market gave back some gains after notching its best week since 1974. Oh, you mean the last time we had a really big OPEC thing going on. The S&P 500 was down 1.2% after surging 12% last week. Banks and technology stocks accounted for much of the selling in the early going. Investors are bracing for a sobering first look this week at how coronavirus has hurt corporate America, with several major banks, including J.P. Morgan, Chase, Wells Fargo, and other companies set to report their results for the first 3 months of the year. Analysts project broad declines in earnings across the 11 sectors in the S&P 500. Energy stocks held up the best, though, as oil prices rose 4% after OPEC and Russia agreed over the weekend to cut production so that they can jack up the price for their oil. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know that Netroots Radio will broadcast on, and we will meet up tomorrow for Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin là Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Coeur. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie d'un novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin l'âge tendre, nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.